Politics, commentary, entertainment, sports, news, and opinion now. Here is Steve Malzberg.
You know, Jay Johnson has now visited, at my direction, the border 5 times. He's going for his 6th this week. He then comes back and reports to me extensively on everything that's taking place. So there's nothing that is taking place down there that I am not intimately aware of and briefed on. This isn't theater. This is a problem. I'm not interested in photo ops. I'm interested in solving a problem.
Absolutely. The problem solver in chief, ladies and gentlemen. There isn't a problem he can't solve. Welcome back, and it's time for the Malzberg panel. We welcome in criminal defense attorney Janet Johnson and radio host and author of The Big Black Lie, Kevin Jackson. And I want to ask both of you about the fact that the president not only won't go down to the border, but made a point of taking and having a photo op yesterday of him playing pool and drinking beer with the governor of Colorado. Why don't we start with you, Janet?
I don't think this is the biggest problem. The reason children are massing at the border isn't because President Obama didn't go there. So I do think it's just an optical issue, which isn't really what we should be starting the debate with. But, you know, if it makes everybody keep quiet and it satisfies people, yeah, I guess he should have gone there. But it wouldn't have satisfied people. We'd still be talking about something else that we're going to say he didn't do well enough. But just to keep that issue off the table, I guess he should have just gone there.
Kevin, would we have come up with something else? I mean, I could come up with a list of things he didn't do well enough that caused this problem.
Well, I was going to say he's created the problem that he now is forced to solve. But I'll put it to you this way. I was on a tour, and the tornadoes ravaged the South as me and my tour mate were about to start this tour. And so everywhere we went, the tornadoes had cut through in 7 states. And I will tell you this. Had I not seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it. It looked like a war zone. The only way that you put optics on something is not through sycophants and suck-ups. It's by going and doing something yourself. It shows leadership. The reason why Barack Obama doesn't want to go is because it's a problem that he's created. He doesn't want the media frenzy around seeing all these children and what it's doing to these border states. So you know what? Let's not create a bunch of brouhaha over this, and maybe it'll just go away, and we can bring in these 57,000 and the next 100,000 that are going to be following them.
But he didn't sign the law. George Bush signed the law. It's not his problem. George Bush signed the law.
Well, George Bush signed a law that is now being, in effect, taken out of context. The intent of that law was to protect children from child trafficking. In fact, today, Harry Reid and Nancy Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi don't think it's a bad law because today both of them said they're not going to change it.
Well, yeah, but I mean, so now you're blaming them. But you know what Mr. Jackson just said is the president created the problem. Technically, the law
did create the problem. He did create the problem. He created the problem by taking out an ad, but for Homeland Security, taking out an ad in January saying, we're going to have 60,000 unaccompanied kids. We need people to escort them around the country. They knew exactly what was happening, Janet, and what was going to happen.
He had to implement the law.
Not only that, and let me say this.
Let Janet, go ahead, Kevin, let Janet respond first. Go ahead.
Thank you, Steve. That's the problem when you have a bad law. If he has to uphold the law, you can't have children sitting in shelters.
The law was signed in 2000, Janet, the law was signed in 2008. Right. So he knew that in 2014, all of a sudden it was a bad law and kids were going to come in. Give me a break, Kevin.
No, but what's happening?
The point I was going to make.
Now. Go ahead, Kevin.
The point I was going to make is they knew this was coming. Obama's immigration policy has essentially invited anybody and everybody that wants to come in. I know the liberals don't like to talk about this, but even the idea of running the guns into Mexico and probably Central America in order to create the situation of the various cartels and what have you was with the idea that we can bring these kids in at some point. This is all contrived, is what it amounts to.
You think they're going back, Janet?
No, I mean, I think it's tricky when you're dealing with children. I mean, let's face it. Who wants to be the person who takes the children and deports them back? And, you know, as the child...
I will. I will. And I'll tell you who else will. We just had Senator Johnson on. He will. They figured out that for about $1,000 a kid, you could take him to a hotel, get him showered, feed him a great meal, buy him a new outfit, and fly him home first class.
How does
How's
that
that?
violate the law? How does that violate the law? Has
Excuse
to be
me?
repealed. The law has to be repealed to do that. The law says that
Oh, but the president won't. But no. How about a president? Since Nancy Pelosi now says she's not for it, and in the Senate it'll never be repealed because Harry Reid won't bring it up. How about a president who's already selectively enforced laws he likes and said he will not enforce laws he doesn't like, to just say, I'm not going to enforce that Bush law. He's done it a million times before. Janet?
Well, I think you're talking about executive orders, which is different than saying I'm not enforcing that law. But
No. There was no executive order on the welfare reform bill where he relaxed the workforce provision, the workfare provision, or on the Obamacare when he extends deadlines,
Right.
or on telling ICE who to deport and who not to deport. That's all selective enforcement. That's why he's being sued, Kevin.
Yeah, well, you're exactly right. It is selective enforcement. And the fact of the matter is this: just like they've taken advantage of the 14th Amendment to bring anchor babies in when that was not what it is intended to do, they're taking a law that was not intended to do what it's doing here, and they're saying now you can you're going to have to repeal this law in order for this to happen. No, you don't. You can just say, if you're going to come to this country and there is no strife, and certainly not the strife to bring all these kids in en masse the way that they are right now, this is contrived. The left just needs to admit it. Stop playing games with the American people. $3.7 billion allocated for this when there are veterans that are not being treated, poor people losing their homes and all this. And these guys are contriving things to get this country up in an outrage about.
for what? What's the motive? Why would they do that? I mean, as the child of immigrants, there is immigration. We don't close the borders once we get here. So
There's legal immigration in this country, and we
Janet,
need to.
Janet, where did your parents come from, Janet?
My grandparents came from Russia and Poland.
Well, they were legal, as were my grandparents. So when you say as a child of an immigrant, legal. These are illegal. You got to make that little tiny itsy bitsy distinction.
Yeah.
We're coming back with more of Janet Johnson and Kevin Jackson on part 2 of the Malzberg panel, and we will take a look at what's going on in the Middle East and the U.S. policy towards it all, and statements that have been made by this administration today and prior to today. So stay tuned. Part 2 of the Malzberg panel is next, and if you want to reach us, here's how you can do it.